Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
Coming up on the Payoff, Ed Lattimore rose to the top of heavyweight boxing, got signed by Rock Nation, and had a successful career inside of the ring. He finished up 13-1-1, but he decided to stop boxing. He also decided to stop drinking just before that. And now Ed spends his time helping other people, and he does it through so many different channels. It's really hard to keep up. The good thing is we talked about all those different channels, all the ways you can listen to, see, and read Ed. And he's a guy that is so compelling and is so bright and so smart. You got a heavyweight boxer who was a military guy, who is an esteemed chess player now. And he's a writer. He's got a couple books out. And he's sober, and he gives a lot of great advice and shares a lot of knowledge on how to live a sober life. So this is something you definitely want to hear. I was super pumped to talk to Ed Lattimore, and yeah, man, he's a knockout. But coming up, before Ed Lattimore, we got a real knockout. Big bro, Kevin Souza.
Black trunks and weighed in at 219 pounds. Coming to us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he brings a undefeated record of 13 wins. 7 of his 13 wins come by way of knockout. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ed Black Magic Lattimore.
Hello.
Ed.
Hey, 610, man. You're from Philly.
Yeah, and you're from Pittsburgh. And I want to start off. I want to apologize for the delay. I mean, you call up a military boxer late. That's a good way to get your ass kicked. I hate being late, and I think that is something that comes with it's just like sobriety. I think I was not accountable before, so I take it very seriously now. And I was an athlete growing up and in college, so you couldn't be late for that stuff.
You know what's funny about boxing, man? People are not going to believe this. Like, for the first, really the first 5 years of my career, man, everybody was late everywhere. And it kind of like, and it really messed with me because I'm like, yo, this is supposed to be like high performers. And well, it turns out the more I learned about fighting, the more I'm like, oh, okay, this is like one of those things that separates people as you move up the pyramid. Who can adhere to a workout, you know, and stay on time.
Dude, I got so much to get to with you because I'm not only interested in, you know, the fact you got sober, and this podcast about sobriety, but your story is unbelievable. I want to start from the very beginning. Are you in Pittsburgh now?
I'm in Pittsburgh right now.
So you were born in Pittsburgh and you were raised in Pittsburgh.
Yep, this is where most of it's gone down, minus a few, you know, trips to other places for a while.
Well, your career took you some other places, took you out to California. I know that. I read about that. But you grew up in the projects in Pittsburgh. What is that like? A lot of people cannot identify and have no clue what that's like.
You know what's funny about growing up in that environment is you don't realize anything's wrong until you step out into another environment. And for me, I think I got exposed to other people relatively early because of my school, or really the Pittsburgh Public School District, does this thing called the Gifted Program. I don't know if they do it anymore, but once they identify you as perhaps being slightly more intelligent or talented, they send you to another school one day a week with other kids from around the city. And so I got exposed to a different group of people pretty early on, as early as first grade, I think. And I was like, oh, wow, this is like a different world. These are different people. And you know, I'd never really seen white people even in person.
Yeah.
And that was like I was all illuminated. And then I started like, when I got older and I went to middle school, and then I seen people from different backgrounds. I got exposed a little more, but my middle school was like still a feeder. It wasn't until I got to high school. My high school was kids from. I went to a magnet program way across the city. I actually had to take 2 buses to high school, and I was like, "Wow, we are like really messed up, and like not just kinda messed up." Okay, and so I say that to say that it didn't seem that rough growing up. It just was like, this is what I have to do. Well, like one of the things that stunned me, I remember asking a kid in ninth grade, like, how many fights he'd been in. He's like, how many? What's wrong with you? I've never been in a fight.
How many? How often did you fight growing up?
So much, like just like it was like a thing. Like I thought it was normal. In fact, when I got to high school, I was surprised by how not normal it is. And I see everyone making like a big deal about bullying, and that's a big deal. And one of the things I've had to do as an adult is I've had to reconcile, like, okay, so while it didn't ruin me, but it probably came pretty close, and I'm lucky, but it's still not a thing that your typical student should have to endure. But we all endured it, and we all are alive. So I'm like, okay, how do I feel about that? And I have to remember that just because I survived it doesn't mean you should go through it.
You talk about surviving it, and you talk about part of your upbringing. I think I've heard you say you were a bit of an outcast, and
you isolated my life.
You isolated a great deal, played a lot of video games. But one of the things that kind of it was a kick to the balls to me when I heard you say it is you had a nickname growing up. And
oh yeah, man. It used to be so traumatic I couldn't say it. Now I'm cool. They used to call me Congo because the Michael Crichton book came out, and then they made a movie but with the apes, and so the biggest connection they made was, oh, this guy looks like an ape, we're gonna call him Congo.
Did you find yourself fighting a lot because of that?
Not because of that in particular, because one of the things I mastered very early, and it was because of a lot of the attempted emotional manipulation at home and then in the street, I learned very early how to be relatively non-reactive. I mean, even now, I have a weird relationship with this. A lot of times I won't, like, it's just very hard to get a rise out of me. But I am unbelievably sensitive and aware to any type of emotional manipulation, and I tend to lash back at it pretty hard. It's to shut it down, because I've learned that you let people think they've moved in, even if they haven't. They start acting as if they do, and now you've got a bigger problem, and that deters a lot of conflict after a certain point. Especially when you're towering over middle schoolers. And then I got to high school, no one's trying to fight there. People settle problems.
People trying to get on with their lives. Yeah.
What parents care? They show up.
What was the drugs and alcohol scene like growing up in the projects? I know the projects are different from the ghetto, but.
So the drugs and alcohol. So here's what's funny, right? I've written and talked about my sobriety a lot. And people just assume I grew up drinking. Man, I had my first drink till I was I think it was 17 or 18, right? But we were surrounded by that stuff. And my immediate reaction, because, I had a babysitter that was a straight up crackhead. I remember one time I couldn't make sense of the memory until I was older. But in my memory as a young kid, I think I was 4, because I remember my sister was born, but she couldn't move. She was still a baby. I squirted a gun on the couch, a squirt gun on the couch, and the neighbor and the babysitter, the junkie, was super angry with me and was arguing with my mom. My mom had to pay her some money, and I'm like, "What's all this for water?" It turns out that water was heroin, and that squirt gun was a syringe. I found out, and I had been around them while they were smoking rock. I didn't know it was rock though. I just thought it was a sugar cube, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't have any little things like that, right?
Yeah.
And then when we moved, I lived next door to an actual dealer, and that's a different game entirely. Because like you can buy drugs like on the street, right? Everybody knows about like handoffs and quarter boys and things like that. But you also got something like called the trap, which is like a house you go to buy drugs, which is like a silly idea. But we live next door to one of those.
You were an amateur boxer, then you became a pro boxer, but you were drinking throughout your amateur career. You said you drink, you train, you fight. When did that really start to ramp up?
Well, I started drinking probably the summer between the true freshman year, right? So between the age of 17 and 18, right? That summer right after graduating from high school. Started doing that.
What was happening to you? What was it like? How was it affecting you?
Well, here's the cool thing, right here. This was great about when you are kind of on top of the world in any way, shape, or form, and this theme is going to repeat itself. When you have one functional thing going, or your life doesn't look like a mess, not only can you lie to people, other people will lie for you. And it's not like I had a problem. That's what I say to myself. I'm just being 18. It's being crazy, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I don't have a problem. That just means being 18. And then, my dad had died at this point, right? And we ended up, well, not we, because my sister was still 15. I ended up getting like $55,000 in life insurance and a lump sum. And here's what's crazy. That like now I look at that and go, that's not a lot of money at all, right? But at that age, from my background, that was a huge come up. I had no idea how to handle that money either, man. Like craziness, right? In fact, I was a side note. I was worse than broke in 18 months from receiving it. I was actually overdrawing my bank account to get some money to head back to school. But one of the things I did with the money, while I wasn't super drinking, I was, it was bottles here, bottles there, man. It was very easy.
Were drugs a part of your story at all?
No. Because drugs terrify me. Drugs terrify me to this day.
Because of what you saw growing up?
Yeah, because I never. It's funny, man. Like I think everybody who has some type of addiction looks at other addictions like, oh, how could you do that? But no, man, I never drifted to harder drugs, but booze, that was my thing. I said I'm gonna be the hardest. I remember thinking that, be the hardest drinker in the crew.
So you work hard, you work hard, play hard, because you start to train and you become a successful boxer. How do you walk that tightrope, or is it a tightrope of you're an alcoholic and you're becoming your work is physical. A guy can show up and get drunk and maybe do a comedy show or do an office job, right? But like you got to train to get ready for fights.
Well, you know what you start doing, it's very easy to when you're like devoted to something. It's easy to look at what you have to do to be devoted to it, and then you look at all the places where you can not be, and that's where you really feel and hammer the gap. So, for example, I was really good at like not drinking the week of a fight, like amazing. And then I remember the first time I decided to have a beer, like 3 days before a fight, and I went and won the fight, and I said, not so bad anymore, right?
Yeah, it's like those doors we walk through, man.
Yep. And most of my career I was fine, and that's how it go. I would then it turned into drinking 3 days before a fight and stuff like that. But if I wasn't prepping for a fight, I would be like crazy. In fact, I remember one time this is how you out of control. They were like, all right, we might have a fight for you. They should do a St. Patrick's Day thing for fighting, because the Irish and the Irish have a big, strong tradition of fighting and drinking,
Yeah.
And they would have this St. Patrick's Day show, and they were like, we don't know if we can get a guy for you, just stay on standby. And that lasted till like 10 a.m. And then I was just sloshed, man. I said, look, if they give me a guy, it's going to be a bad night. Unfortunately, they didn't give me a guy, right? So it didn't matter. But that was like one of the last times I came that close to that line. I mean, I show up to like certain workouts hungover, but not too crazy. And then I started like trying to figure out how to fit some drinking in during the day before practice. And that's when my coach was like, "What's wrong with you?" I've seen everything. And he's seen a lot of stuff, but I've never seen a guy try to show up and train with a little bit of booze. And I was like, "You out of your mind." And that was one of the real wake up calls when my coach yelled at me. That was one of them.
You kind of underplay. You don't underplay it, but I've heard you're a humble guy, and you definitely don't exaggerate. But you were 13-1-1 as a heavyweight. You, like I said earlier, you achieved great success. You signed with Rock Nation, was like 6 fights in. What is that?
Yeah.
Now, on paper, that looks super exciting. Like, you sign, especially somebody that's my age who grew up with, Rockefeller and Dame Dash, and it's like there's something very exciting about that. What was that experience like when you signed to Rock Nation? Have you made it, or?
I'm about to ruin all your dreams and expectations about the boxing game. Okay, so first off, there is like no money in this sport. It is really not. I mean, I tell guys all the time, if you want to do this, you got to have a reason to do it that is not about money, because that won't come. And there's not even really that many girls interested either. So I'd probably not do it for that. I mean, you got to really want to have it. All right. Now, I say this to set the tone for my first 6 professional fights. They were club shows, and they were actually pretty big club shows because we had a guy, Paul Spadafora, who was making his comeback. Paul Spadafora was like, until Mayweather broke it, he had the longest undefeated streak and was world champion.
I've heard of him.
My coach was, so my coach was Paul Spadafora's coach. All
okay.
Right? So when Paul was getting on cards, I get on cards, and they'd be bigger than usual club show cards.
Hey, where'd you train, by the way?
At World Class Boxing under Tom Yankello.
Okay, and this is in Pittsburgh?
As a pro. Yeah, as a pro, that's where I spent my whole career.
Okay. Sorry, I cut you off. All right, so you're talking about these club shows. It's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the most I made, because when you're on these club shows, you got to sell your own tickets. So I'm the sales guy, I'm the promoter, I'm the fighter, I'm the trainer. Yeah, well, I'm the trainer. But I'm taking on more role than just a fighter. And the most money I made before Rock Nation was like $700 for a fight. 25% of which immediately disappears to my coach and manager, right?
Yeah.
So because even though it's not a lot, this is like, yo, we got to eat too. Like, what's up? So,
yeah.
All right, cool. Now I signed with Rock, and with their contract, I was making $1,000 a round, which is not that much money still. It's just not a lot. Now I get to like say I'm signed to Rock Nation, and that opens doors and all, but in terms of like doors to a higher income bracket, nah, not really. Didn't really happen. At this point in my life, I'm also in school and in the military. I'm getting money back because of the GI Bill. And so
you're in the military while you're boxing professionally?
Yep, National Guard. All of this is happening at the same time. And so while it was really cool, you post on social media and people go, "Oh man, you with Rock Nation? Oh, with Rock Nation, that's cool." It didn't like equate too much financially,
uh-huh.
But it was cool to say I did that.
It gives people sticker shock in a good way. It's like, damn, Rock Nation. So you continue to progress in your career, but as you progress, there's something you mentioned about, you're the sales guy, you're everything. There's something special about boxing, and it's one of the cooler aspects of the sport is you've got to be a personality. I gotta like you for whatever reason, or I gotta hate you. But it's almost like wrestling like that. Like you're trying to get money from me. Well, I'm only going to spend money on somebody I want to see, a character. How do you create that?
So this is cool, man. And I talk about this a lot to people. I go, look, I had to learn how to be likable and draw people in without being like this it had to fit me naturally, right? Because I'm not the guy that was. I couldn't play the heel. That just wasn't going to be me. I don't have. You've spoken to me now for almost half an hour. You can tell I don't have the thug vernacular. Like, I'm not going to be that guy either. Okay, so what I had to do was I had to appeal to what appealed to me, and I was just going out there and letting my work do the talking, and you know, I got a little more comfortable talking trash and hyping the fight up, but really, what I think worked really well for me is I knocked people out, and I'm smaller than the average heavyweight, and so people come to see it. As one of my good friends always said, like, don't underestimate how much people pay to see a black kid knock people out, even in this day and age. And I was just like, yeah, you know, you're not wrong. And so that's what I did, and it made the fights exciting. People were talking. And that's what you want to do. You want to generate some buzz, and you got to generate the buzz in a way that's not just in the community, because it's like what do you get? Those fans were coming anyway. I got to bring in fresh blood. That was another thing I did that worked really well because of my connections. I spent a lot of time drinking in bars, and more specifically drinking in bars with college kids. So that's new blood. That's new people. You know, we put Lattimore on an amateur show. He's going to bring, 10 or 15 new people that would not have normally come to a show, and that's good for amateur numbers.
Did you feel like drinking was almost like a vehicle for success? Like, hey, look, I'm
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I remember. I'm actually talking about this right now because I'm putting together a TED Talk actually about recovery. Okay, and one of the things that I realized was that people want to touch something beyond the mundane, and for most people, a club level fighter is beyond the mundane, because how many people do they know who have fought and traveled and who fight in general and are not like illiterate and crazy? So there was this appeal. All right. And so people would pay for my drinks. I remember one time I went out, I said, this is when I was first trying to quit. I said, I'm not going to bring my bank card. That's going to be my out. I'm going to tell people I don't have any money. That's why I'm not drinking. And I'm at the bar, and some guy goes, yo, I just saw your fight. This is back when YouTube was just getting up there. He goes, yo, all your drinks are on me. I said, God damn it, right? and then there was this bar I used to take people to afterwards called Gene's Place after the fight. So Gene's would get a lot of business from this. He'd do great. He came to be a favorite of mine. To where I would go in there and get a free drink. Well, when I was trying to stop drinking, but I still thought I could toe that line and hang out in the bar, I went to this other bar in the same neighborhood. I'm down there one night just hanging out with my buddy, drinking a tonic water. All of a sudden, a shot shows up. I look up his Gene. He's like, "Oh, Gene sent these over. He said whatever you want is on him." I'm like, here we go. Right. So what ends up happening is people know a way to relate to you, and this is how they're gonna touch you. And this is how they know you. They know me through alcohol. So their natural instinct is going to be, let's kick on some drinks. And these people love fighting, so I feel good being around them, and then I can generate an income from this as well. So in many ways, alcohol is kind of, in my mind, it's all in my mind, but I think it's real, has solidified itself as a real contributor to my success. When anything could be further from the truth, but that's what I thought.
What happens when you go out to California to train?
So it's crazy out there, man. So when I went out to California, it was like a dream come true for an athlete, man. They paid for my apartment, they paid for my food, they gave me like a $4,000 stipend. All I had to do was train and win boxing matches. That's it. Like, I think I got lost one, and it was like at the high level because they were sending people out whenever they lost, right? And I did a good job. But here's the thing, man. I was lonely as heck. Like, L.A., first of all, you can't live in L.A. if you ain't got a driver's license or buy a car. I mean, you can, but, like, you got to be in the right place.
Yeah.
My driver's license was suspended. Not for anything drinking related. I had forgot to pay a ticket,
Uh-huh.
so I couldn't do anything with that. and I wasn't really messing with other fighters. I never really have. There's a few I get along with. Just as people, like I get along with everybody, but like we're gonna go kicking and hang out, like it never happened.
Yeah.
And so what I started to do, I started to drink and drink a lot. Check this out, right? Yeah, you'll be able to appreciate this based on your zip code or your area code. Pennsylvania is one of two states in the country where the government controls the liquor distribution. Okay,
Yeah.
so we got to go to wines and spirits. I didn't know that. Chris Rock's got that joke. It's either Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle. I don't want to be that, all black people look the same dude. But like, he got that joke where he's like, you got to prepare me for when I go to the projects. Everything, you're about to go to the hood. You see liquor store, gun store, liquor store, liquor store. I didn't get that joke until I moved to California.
Yeah.
Because in California, I go right across the street to the Target and get some booze, right? Get a bottle right there in the Target. It was love, man.
What
so I
happens?
had this great idea.
Go ahead. You had the great idea.
I had this great idea, man. I was like, look, let me. I miss hanging out with everybody. These good feelings. Let me drink to try and recreate those feelings, and it, it worked. But that's a deal with the devil, man. You're in bad shape when you start doing that, and that's what I did. So I drank a whole lot when I was out there.
Did you find yourself suffering consequences from your drinking?
No. In fact, I did all right because here's the thing: there was nobody to hang out with. There was nobody to see. All I had to do was go train. I tried to build a bit of a social life, but I didn't know how to socialize without booze, and you can't go anywhere and drive or go anywhere without driving. So that was hard. So while I didn't suffer any consequences per se, it's not like I was getting better. I mean, and this is luck. I mean, just a lot of luck. I mean,
yeah, and you're out there and you continue to fight, and then what?
Continue to fight.
What happens, Ed, when you're like I no longer need to do this? Because that's tough. I mean, it sounds like you stopped. First of all, you're like I said earlier, you're a smart guy. Like even when you realize that boxing's not going to really give you a ton of money, you go with the National Guard. But did you just decide, hey, this is not working in my life, or did something happen?
Man, I wish I had woke up one day and was like, man, you know what? Done with alcohol. Like, nah, man, I got back from. So when you enlist, you got to go away to basic training, and that's 10 weeks. And then my AIT, advanced individual training, that was another. It was supposed to be 22 weeks, but they shortened it, and I ended up getting home like at the end of December. So I went out with my friends one night, and I had a night, that I'll never forget if I could remember it, And what ended up happening, apparently, I showed up, started drinking, pissing people off. I ended up at my friend's house. I don't have any idea how I got there. And then I'm looking through my phone, making sure I didn't send anything stupid. I'm sure I did. I just can't remember anything. But it was at that moment that I was like, yo, this is not going to work. Like, I got a lot to lose now because I just got out the Army. Or not just got out, but just like started my career in the Army. I got out of basic training. My pro career was going to kick back up because I left. I had 3 pro fights before I enlisted, or before I left for training. I came back. That was going to be, kicked up. School was on the agenda now. I was enrolled, and I had just met the woman who I'm still with now. About to get married. It was 10 years ago, and I said I don't want to mess that relationship up. If it goes sour, I want it to go sour because I'm a genuine asshole, not because I do something Trump.
The stakes got too high.
Yeah, I see. So I think what really happened in the weirdest way, man. It sounds like I'm doing all this stuff and doing well, and I'm doing now. But I think at that point in my life, I didn't really care. I think I gave myself things to care about, and and another powerful thing that happened is, I think everybody who quits drinking has a pain point and they're like, yo, this hurts, but they're stuck in the cycle, whatever. I was able to, my time away at basic and then going forward with school and everything too, I was able to finally build for the first time ever probably a relationship, new set of relationships in my life where alcohol was not the focus. And I was like, yo, this guy's pretty cool. And that identity was strong enough to where, that was the last time, man. December 22nd was the last day I had alcohol.
What was that, 2013?
2013. So this year it'll be 9 years.
So 3 years later is your last professional fight, December of 2016. Again, I said it. You retire at 13-1-1. Look, man, I got to. Why'd you stop fighting? Like, what was the reason?
you know what's funny, man?
Because people, I want people to go to YouTube, Google. YouTube at Lattimore. You're beating people's ass. You're fighting what seem to be pretty big fights.
There's the fight I get my ass kicked in too, on YouTube.
But there's only one.
That's another story. So here's why I stopped fighting, man. This is the truth, and this is a bit of a multifaceted answer. I'll try and condense it as much as possible. Fighting is a very hard way to earn a hard living. I'm investing in 30 to 40 hours training. Now, I'm not talking about time in the gym. I mean, like where I'm actually moving, hitting stuff, studying film, whatever, right? And you heard the pay, and so the pay it's not as much as you would expect, certainly for the investment of energy. All right, so there's that part. And I realized, I figured out between, we'll say, 2017 and 2018, really. That's when I figured out that people like reading what I write.
Yeah.
And I can like monetize that and really make a decent living. And that's what I've been doing pretty much ever since. I had a short gig where I really enjoyed. I took it on because I needed it at first, and then I stuck with it even after I didn't need the money anymore. Where I was tutoring kids in physics and math. I had a kid in chemistry too, but chemistry is pretty straightforward. But
it's not easy.
And math, I had a great time doing that. But I was also, I self-published my first book, and then I learned that I was like, I've got this mailing list. People will pay me.
So you got two books published.
Promote there.
I got two published. Not caring what other people think is a superpower, and Sober Letters to My Drunken Self. People can find those on Amazon, and your blog starts Mind and Fist. And did you start the blog synonymous with stopping drinking? Was that an outlet where you could be honest about what was happening with you?
No, I started the blog because I've always loved writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had tried other blogs before focused around different topics. And then in 2012, I said, you know what? Ed Lattimore is going to be someone one day. And whatever he decides to talk about or write about or be about, I want people to follow me and be interested. This is before I knew anything about SEO. It turns out I made a really smart decision from an SEO perspective, but I just wanted the freedom to write about whatever I was interested in. Search engine optimization.
Oh.
So people find me looking up ideas, or now now my name is a search term. People will search my name, and my website shows up.
Yeah,
and that's cool. And when people
it's real
to
cool.
it and
EdLattimore.com. EdLattimore.com is the website, and you can find all kinds of stuff on there. You write a lot about being sober, and you write a lot about other stuff. And like you mentioned, you're a compelling writer.
Yeah. So that really changed my life. That and social media, and I'll never forget this when I actually stopped. Now when I stopped mentally is very different than when I stopped officially physically, because I think every fighter harbors the idea that he's going to come back for at least 2 or 3 years, and then I think last year I was like, yeah, I'm done with this. And in fact, I know exactly what it was. I was helping Roy Jones Jr. I was the sparring partner for him for his fight against Tyson, because my coach is Roy Jones' coach as well, and he was like, hey man, you still in shape? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm still in shape. I help you out. So I come up and work there. But when I stopped training, when I stopped, it was May 2018. We had a comeback fight because I took a year off after the end of December 2016. And then I was coming back in the gym. So I took all of 2017 off. Then 2018, I was in there working out, getting ready. I got offered a fight against this dude in New Zealand. They were going to pay for me to come out there and everything and promote the fight 2 weeks before. It was a guy I was almost certainly just going to walk through and beat pretty one-handedly. And I said, let me go spar. Without my coach's permission or without my coach, let me go spar this kid so he'll come and spar us. And while we were sparring, he cracked me because I was a better fighter and I was just as physically strong, but I underestimated how much of a difference it would make if he's been training for 18 months continuously and I'm just getting back into it. So he got me with a good shot, ended up breaking my orbital and giving me a pretty bad concussion. And my coach, after he finished yelling at me, he was like, look, man, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, do you see how your life is going right now? Why are you still fighting? Because at that point, I had just graduated. And I had my first 5-figure month online, pure from just selling stuff and writing.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, you're doing great. Why are you still here? And hearing that from my coach made a big difference because there are a lot of other people who could have said something like that to me and I'd have been like, oh, yeah, whatever. But here's somebody with like vested financial interest in me continuing to fight. And he's like, you don't need to do this. He's like, I'll train you if you want to, but you don't need to. So I really thought about that. And I was like, you know, one of the things I've always wanted to do, there's a whole wide world I want to see and travel and visit to. And that's really hard to do when you train. We tried it. You can't, you just can't, between working out and then being in a gym and being ready for fights, you can't go places when you're training. So yeah, so ultimately why I stopped is I found a better way to make a living that was less painful. And then now there's some other supplementary stuff too. I'm only 6'1". The average height of these guys now, people have crunched it on different sites, 6'4" to 6'5". That's a big difference when there's an unlimited weight cap. Like if we all had to come in at like 201, that'd be different. But when you can just build muscle and frame, well, look at the top 10 heavyweights fighting right now. There's not a single one under 6'3".
Yeah.
You know, so I said, you know, what the amount of energy and effort it would take to get there, is it worth it? No, it's cool. Like it's cool to be like, oh, I'm a fighter, but then when you got to be a fighter, I know what that's like. I don't want to go back to that.
We'll get back to this conversation in a second, but right now, a word from our sponsors.
The all-new Chevy Colorado is made for more. Stacked with the latest in-vehicle technologies like a class-leading 11-inch diagonal center touchscreen and an extra-large wireless charging pad. Plus, it features wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to make staying connected easy wherever your adventure takes you. Chevy Colorado, made for more. Learn more at Chevrolet.com/truck/Colorado. Claims based on latest competitive data.
You're very real. You're very real in the way that you write and the way that you talk. And you write a lot about sobriety. What are some of the things that you've been able to author that have been very helpful to people?
People have. So just off the top of my head, I just wrote an article about dealing with the death of your parents, and a lot of people got a lot out of that. I was really surprised because I just, you know, I try to write what's true to me and what's true to the search engine, right? But if I have to pick one, I usually write what's true to me. And that really helped people because I'm just writing about my thoughts and how I dealt with them and how I experienced them. All of my stuff on quitting pornography addiction, that has really resonated strongly with guys. I didn't realize how much of a problem it was, but those articles on my site are by far the most viewed in organic search. So when people are searching, they come and find it, and I get somebody writing me telling me that helped them out. I got a program about vice breakers breaking bad habits, where I get testimonials like, you know, some woman told me she bought the program for this girl she watches and she has it, and the girl stopped cutting. And I was like, I was never even trying to create that kind of thing. I was just trying to help people with alcohol and booze. I didn't know the principles apply to stuff like that.
And you're putting great stuff out there into the universe. And one of the things I've heard you talk about is, dude, and it helped me. That sober guy, our buddy Shane Raymer had you on, and you were talking to him about socializing and having fun and going out without being drunk and without alcohol and being comfortable in your own skin. I think a lot of people equate drinking with having fun. And you have a great way of articulating that about, hey, man, you got to get comfortable with who you are. And then you can. Yeah.
That was a big, because I thought about that issue. And that was going to be an issue because of who I am. Because I don't know if I qualify as like a super pure crazy extrovert, but I definitely do well around people and communicating. And one of the issues I was facing when I first stopped drinking was everything was in a bar. And so if I'm going to go, how am I going to reconcile this going to a bar and I'm not drinking? And then if you spend too much time, you eventually become, what you're around. What is the old saying? You spend enough time in a barbershop, you're eventually going to get a haircut kind of deal. So you spend enough time in a bar, eventually you're going to do a shot. So I had to figure out how to deal with that. And one of the things I realized is that you're in control where you socialize. And that might sound novel to a lot of people, but there's nothing that says you have to connect with your friends at the bar. But what it requires of you to do is really invest in your relationships, and that's what I've done. I'm like, hey man, you want to get together for some coffee and chat? See how things are going in your life. Let's play some chess. Oh, do you want to go to a ball game or something? Or we'll hit the gym. Things like that. I remember when I went to Fort Worth the first time, and I went by myself because there was a dinner I was going to, and I had a free night, and my brain, I remember old me would be like, where are the bars? Let's go.
Yeah.
And I ended up finding the largest Alamo Museum east of the Mississippi. That's what they bill themselves as. And I also, or west of the Mississippi, and I also ended up going to a really cool jazz concert. And these are just the kind of ways you start seeing the world when you stop drinking, but you refuse to stop being involved with the world. Because I think a lot of people think when you stop drinking, that shuts down a bunch of things that you can do. And that is sad, but I understand how one comes to that conclusion. But since I would not accept that, now I just have so many ways and things to do and ways to look at the world, and it makes you more curious when you go other places because people really do bar tours and distillery tours, and that's their thing. And since that's not my thing, my brain doesn't even think about it, and I'm automatically scanning the area for what to do, what to see, and who to connect with.
But you don't have to stay inside. You don't have to stay inside. You get out, you connect with people, and there's a vibe and energy you get off that you kind of the same thing. For me, I used to get off alcohol and drugs, being with somebody, being real, putting myself in situations outside of my norm, make me feel excited and stuff. And it's interesting,
It's great. And here's a cool thing that happens. You eventually, and I describe it as a sobriety habit, because just like you have an alcohol habit, the opposite of that is a sobriety habit, and it eventually becomes so strong. Like I can go, I watched the Super Bowl with my buddies in a bar. I'm not shaking oh God, I can't, No, I don't have those issues. But I also, the moment I get bored, and here's what's different. The moment I get bored, I'm like, all right, guys, I'm out. Well, I'll catch you guys another night or whatever. When I go out for a game, if I'm bored by halftime, I just go home instead of ordering a drink to keep myself out. It's reduced the quantity of social touches, but it's 10x the quality.
Dude, I do the exact same thing. I do the exact same thing. And I think, no, but I believe it goes to what you're talking about. You need to be comfortable in your own skin to do that too, because a lot of times for me, I'm people pleasing. I'm like, oh, if I get up and say I'm leaving, people are going to be like, oh, where are you going? First of all, they're not going to be like that. Nobody gives a shit, right? And then second of all, you wrote a book on it, but I can't give a shit what other people think.
Yeah, you got to focus on you, man. Because look, here's the thing, and maybe you had this exact experience or something similar. When I got sober, or rather before, one of the things that really impeded me, I think, probably set me back almost 2 years, is I went to my friends who I was drinking with and talked to them about my thoughts of getting sober. And when you're with people, when you ask them about if they think you drink too much and they're also drinking, that puts them in a tricky spot. And maybe they don't realize it, but it's a bit of cognitive dissonance. They can't say yes because it's gonna cause them to pull in on you, and they would like to not say, and they like to say, no. But what if, them saying, you got an issue, lets them help you get help, but they don't see it that way because they see themselves through you and their surroundings.
Yeah.
So they're telling me, I'm a friend today, age forever, man. Are you sure? I was like, and I questioned it, right?
Yeah.
But now I don't have that issue because I'm more worried about me. I'm so much more worried about me, and I know that if I control this, the little bit of social interaction, the low quality but high quantity social interactions that I'll miss out on, it's a fun trade off for one never having an issue with who I text or what I text, or never getting behind the wheel thinking it's only a mile down the road or things like that. The trade off is well worth it.
Well, what do you tell? And I don't want you to give away all the secrets, but what do you tell people that stop drinking and are trying to not care what other people think? Like I said, you wrote a book on this, but how do people stop worrying about what other people think? I know that's a loaded topic.
You got to take it baby steps, man. Like, I would never ever tell somebody stop drinking and hang out with the same people in the same places. Nope, because that's a recipe for failure. Instead, you got to go start building a life that you're really comfortable and proud of, and without alcohol. However you do that is however you do it. There are numerous ways to do it. But when you have a life that you feel good and comfortable with and strongly about, then you're not really worried about what other people think. In fact, you're probably going to develop a bit of arrogance towards them and go, well, look at you. You need alcohol to have a good time. I'm cool over here, right? And that is, maybe the outcome happens, maybe it doesn't. But the general principle still stands, to be proud of something else in your life. So you're not, you only care when you feel like that's important, okay? When that stops being important, when that approval stops being important, that's a big deal. I remember one of the hardest people for me to talk about my sobriety to what was like this girl who I'm like not involved with whatever, but all she knew me was a fun drunk guy.
Yeah.
And one night we don't have, because that's a new identity, and I used to care about that. And now it's like this, like that guy. I don't want to be anything associated with the old guy. And if you want to, cool. But it's not for me, and it's not a thought process anymore in my mind.
I like you being vulnerable and telling people that, because again, like here we are, we got this heavyweight boxer, and you're people pleasing, right? Like just like and you had to walk into the ring and not be worried about getting embarrassed. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
man,
there's one place to be embarrassed. Like, guys are like listening to this and, they're thinking, well, I'm going to go to a basketball game with the girl for the first time and not be drinking. Like, what if she rejects me, And, here you are talking about walking into the ring, one mano a mano. That, I got to believe that's the ultimate test of possibly getting embarrassed.
You know what? I really think that. So I'll just tell you a story, man. This is how I'm a weird duck, man. When I was out in LA, they brought out a sports psychologist to evaluate all of us. And the guys, and I guess he used to what are the hockey team, the Kings, I think.
Yeah, LA Kings.
And he used to work with them, and he was talking about how he'd never seen somebody quite like me. In that, as we get closer to the ring, we get closer to the fight. all of my symptoms of anxiety get lower and lower. And I thought that was crazy because one of the things, because that's trained. I didn't wake up like that.
Yeah.
I learned that I learned how to breathe, and I learned where to put my mind so I could go in there and not be anxious, because I know that when the more emotional your mind is, the harder it is for you to react in control, right? You're going to be just as reactive as an emotional being, but it may not be a calculated reaction of the way. And that's weird, a calculated
No,
reaction.
where did you put your mind?
Yeah. So that's one of those things that I learned to do. And that same principle, though, is hard to execute socially for whatever reason. I think it's because I know that in a ring, the first thing I'm trying to prove is that I'm not going to crumble when I get hit. And I can strengthen myself and train myself to be prepared. There's really no way to prepare for being outcast except for being outcast. And I think also why I didn't think about that until now, this is like therapy sometimes, these podcasts. One of the things that I think going to the Army trained me to do, and then for the first time in a long time, was be outcast, because I went when I was 28, man.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of kids, a lot of kids. They were probably the harder part than the drill sergeant to deal with. But yeah, you get used to feeling different, and you realize, you're not different in a negative way. You're different in a real empowering way. Once you see it that way, you kind of feel bad for people who are not capable of stepping away, who can't see another way to socialize.
John Lucas, NBA great. He's still a coach with the Rockets, I think, in some capacity. But his career ended because of cocaine and alcohol abuse, and he got sober. And he works with athletes who are trying to get sober and recover, whatever. And he says that it's very, very hard for the athlete to get sober because you need to have that ego to go and beat somebody's ass or beat somebody off the dribble. Was that difficult for you? And how did you, if you like crush your ego? They say the ego has to be smashed. How did you figure that out?
Well, that's very true, man, because you want to be, I used to say I wanted to be known as the dude that could outdrink everybody else, right? I wanted to be that guy. Okay. And there's a certain bravado or reverence. That's what it was. There's a certain reverence.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's given to that. And I fed off of it, and it was part of me for a while. But the way I beat it and the way I dealt with it is I just looked at the cost and benefits, and I looked at them real sober and with a long eye. And it was right after I had was hungover and drunk, and I was looking at all this, and I said, look, man, if I continue this, because this was a big thought of mine. Then, this was also a big thought of my mind too. Is like long term, because I'm making all these long term moves, right? Mm-hmm. For the positives, I'm building the bucket up, but I still got this big old hole in the bottom. All right, so I said I got to figure out how I'm gonna fill this hole, and I looked at what I was doing. I looked at it and said, if I'm still doing this in 5 years, well, one, will I make it that long, and how will my life look? And I had figured out, I hadn't put it in the words yet, but I had intuitively started to feel people and your relationships with them are the most important thing. And I was damaging my relationships by drinking. People have a tolerance for you when you do stupid stuff under the influence, but only for so long. It's only a matter of time before you turn into that guy that people don't invite because you can't hold your alcohol.
Yeah, and
even if they were get to work with you.
And you, as a pro fighter, I'm guessing you're working with a pretty long leash. People probably cut you a lot of slack.
Sure. Yeah, but I started to think, and this is a cool thing about having a heart. I don't think that's a weakness to have morality. is that you start thinking like, do you want people to tolerate you or do you want people to celebrate you? And that's how I felt, because when they're giving you a long leash, they're tolerating you. But if they don't have to give you a leash, they're celebrating and looking forward to you. So I dealt with things like, finding out that my friends were saying horrible things about me because of the way I behaved and under the influence. I dealt with, people deciding they're not going to interact with me. I probably, I think about all the friends and relationships I could have if I knew how to control myself or I didn't drink. But I ruined those. And I used to justify it. I used to say, oh, if you're not going to like me when I'm drunk, you're probably not going to like me sober, which is ridiculous. Like hearing it come out of my mouth now. And I also used to say, and be very proud of this too, that 95% of my interpersonal problems are either caused or exacerbated by alcohol. So that means I'm cool. That's how I looked at it, that if only 5% of the problems in my life are organic, I said I was cool, when the reality is it's like, no, the real issue is like 95% of your life is a mess because of alcohol. But that's the perspective you start to take on these things, and that's why it can be just super. People give you that leash, and if you don't realize it's a leash, you're gonna use it up. What do they say? You give somebody enough rope, man, they're gonna hang themselves with it, and that is exactly what will happen if you don't realize that you're just getting a long rope.
You talk about something. I'm not trying to keep you here all day, but this is we'll wrap up here in a little bit. You talk about something where, because you mentioned the 95%. Man, you blew me away hearing you talk about sexual assaults on college campuses, where
oh yeah, man,
95% are alcohol related, right?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to put this. I wrote this chapter and I was going to include it in the book Sober Letters, but I didn't feel like when I
Sober
looked
Letters
over
to
the
My Drunken
flow of the
Self
book,
is a book, right?
Sober Letters to My Drunken Self.
Yeah.
When I looked over the flow of the book, I said, while this is tangentially relevant, it is not. It doesn't contribute to the overall flow of the story. But I kept it because I did good research, and my math wasn't as good as it is now. So I'm probably, when I go back and release it, I'm going to crunch it. But my crude math and heavy research, because I had to dig up different sources, because this information isn't sitting in one database, is that, if you remove alcohol from the equation, then you eliminate 95% of the sexual assaults reported against women ages 18 to 24. And I thought that was so significant in light of, and this was right around when I put out Sober Letters. This was right around the, I want to say Brock Lesnar, but I know that's not right. Brock Turner, maybe, the swimmer out in.
Oh yeah, the guy at Stanford.
Stanford.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And so this raises that debate again, and everyone's like, tell boys not to sexually assault. Don't tell us to stop drinking. I'm like, don't you understand what alcohol does to you? It's not that these guys are walking around as rapists any more than somebody's walking around with murderous intent who kills somebody under the influence behind the wheel. It's that the alcohol literally has this problem or has this effect or makes it more likely. And I had just, I had come to that conclusion anecdotally, and I was listening to some research to put together for my talk, and turns out, lo and behold, one of the things that happens if you have more dopamine receptors than usual is that when you drink alcohol, it's going to fire up your feelings to be sexually aggressive, right? As opposed to some people with fewer ones, they tend to want to go to sleep.
I lived
the
it.
Difference. So when I wrote that chapter, I was just looking. I was like, man, this is crazy, and no one is ever going to touch this because it makes it's huge. Like we can't. It really bothers me. Like that's a stat. I'm happy you brought that up because I've mentioned it on a few podcasts, and then everyone down and then someone grabs that gem and runs with it. But that tells you how powerful, because you're young. Of course you think you know it all at 23. Your brain's not even finished forming yet. And I look at myself at 23 and I'm like, man, when I see 23-year-old kids now, I'm like, wow, you're a child. And
when they're drunk,
you're
when
not
Ed,
even-
when they're drunk, I'm terrified. Right? When they're like wasted, you ever get around a bunch of young kids wasted? You're like, get me out of here now.
And you used to be that one. Yeah, I used to be one of them. And there's nothing more terrifying, man, than like a childish mind in an adult body. Like that is, and alcohol is. It takes that recipe right there, that combination, I guess, and then it just brings out the worst of all worlds. Like the ability to have responsibility, but the lack of maturity to wield it, correctly, and it just is a bad, recipe.
What other things do you tell people about getting sober? Just a couple more key things, because I feel like we're helping some people with this, but a couple more key nuggets before I let you go.
I tell people that sobriety is the best gift I ever gave myself, and I always say that my sobriety date is my second birthday. There's February 15th when I was actually born, and then there's December 23rd where I realized that this is my life to really handle and take control over. When you don't drink, you just don't. The way I describe it is like this. I'll just use my exact terminology. There are entire timelines that just don't exist, and you never have to walk down them. There are problems that you'll never have that you don't even realize how detrimental they could be. Like we were at a wedding, and we were in bed by like 10 o'clock. And why is it significant? Because one of the guests was on a cocaine binge and was going crazy, and the law got involved and everything went crazy with all the guests. And we woke up like, what happened? Oh, we were in bed at 10 o'clock because what is there to do if you're not drinking or partying? You go to sleep. And there are one of the reasons I stopped drinking because I had the foresight to understand, or the understanding of human nature, to understand that if I'm still drinking, I'm giving myself an excuse to go out and weaken my inhibitions, that I will put this relationship that I felt like at the time, and I was right, had potential. And so I said, it allows you to build solid connections with people that really matter. And at the end of the day, I think that's all we have is our connections with other people. And alcohol really interferes with building that, especially when you abuse it, right? Like I'm not the guy that's going to say, no one should ever drink. When you can like control it, like when my fiance drinks, she'll open up a bottle of wine, pour a glass, drink half the glass, and then not only will a glass get empty, like poured out because she won't finish it, but this bottle of wine will sit there for another 6 or 7 months before she opens it again.
Yeah,
that's how people. I don't understand that. Yeah. I don't get it, but it works for her. And if you can drink like that, more power to you. But if you're excessive with it, you don't realize what you're missing. You don't and that's really, if I could sum it up, you don't realize what you're missing because you're constantly sick. So sick is like your new normal.
Something you've been writing a lot about is social media, and it can be addictive to people. How do you seem to have mastered the art of social media? How do you take it in moderation?
Whenever I'm on social media, I'm always on it as a producer. Very rarely, and I mean like very rarely, am I ever just scrolling, like, because I don't get anything from that. Instead, I understand, I recognize what this is. It is an incredible tool for connection and income generation. So I use it like a tool. And I use it also because I think I'm putting out a benign, or not even benign, even better, a helpful, useful message. I don't have a problem coming up with things to say and deliver. So for me, it is very much a tool to help. It is not a tool for indulgence. It's a tool to inspire, not a tool of distraction. And that's really what it boils down to.
All right. Anything else? People can find you at edlattimore.com.
At Lattimore.com. I'm at Lattimore everywhere. If anybody else is born with that name and wants to like do something, they are out of luck. I'm at Lattimore on Twitter. Ed Lattimore Instagram, edlattimore.com is my website. My Facebook is Ed Lattimore Boxer, and then my regular Facebook is Ed Lattimore. Like I got the whole thing on lock.
What did you what music did you enter the ring to? Was it consistent, or did you have a bunch of different?
It was pretty consistent, man. I love The Way by the Dilated Peoples.
Yes. Okay. That's unique.
Yeah, show me the way. You know, it's one of my favorite songs, man. Hard work ain't easy, but easy usually ain't worth it. That's one of those lines from that song.
We'll put that.
And
We'll put that
while
in.
I'm working out.
We'll put that in here. What did you do? How did you find that headspace when you were walking into the ring? Where did you put your brain to where you weren't so too emotional? Because a lot of athletes listen to this, and some young athletes. Where do you put your brain to where you're not totally reactive and over emotional? How did you do that?
I'll take you back right before the fight. The weeks up to the fight, I used to have a big problem where this is why I say this is trained. So I don't, I always never seen it. I'm sure it just didn't manifest the way it manifests to me. So I used to have nightmares before fights that I would be knocked out in front of everybody. And I would have these nightmares before like every fight. This is when I was an amateur. And the way I learned to deal with that, I said, okay, this tells me that I don't feel like I'm as prepared as I could be. So let me go and become as prepared as I could be. So my antidote to that type of nervousness or distraction or anxiety is preparation. And as long as I feel like I am prepared, and I'm the only one in control of that, no one else is, right? When I feel like I'm prepared and I put the reps in, then everything else is just about things I can't control. And I guess that's where that goes, is I make sure I focus on what I can control. And we as athletes tend to have a distorted sense of what we can't control. We think we can control the score by pushing hard. We think we can control the outcome of the play by trying harder. You're going to try as hard as you can, and sometimes the wind blows and the ball goes off, or the ref sees it differently. And you can't control any of that. Sometimes you can't control if a killer lines up across from you and he's just better prepared that day. As long as you can and you are as prepared as you could be, you can leave with some pride. But the outcome is beyond your control, and it's important to remember that. So put your mind on the process. I always thought about my training and what I'll do when things happen. I'm just running to the general game plan because that's what I can control.
What's the craziest thing you ever did to promote a fight?
Man, the craziest thing? Ooh, I'm trying to think.
Or was there something you said? You mentioned, being the Dave Chappelle line from the Rick James episode.
Oh, you know what, dude? Yeah, I just thought about it. Let me tell you something. My coach and my manager got on me about this. So we're always you always got to bring your fighters. As you're building up on the club show, you're bringing guys in, right? And guys sometimes playing hardball. Sometimes it's rightfully so they should be paid more, but other times it's they know they're going to lose.
So you say bringing guys in, people who don't know. These are guys that will come in to fight Ed, that Ed is probably going to beat their ass.
Probably. They're certainly coming in on the B side. There's the A side and the B side, okay, right? Except when you get to the pick'em fights where the line is a difference of 100 or not even points, right?
Yeah.
But what I used to do is I'd message guys all friendly. I'd be like, hey man, just we're trying to make the fight happen. What's going on? And I would love to fight you all the time. And one dude took forever to show up and reply way after we got a guy and he lost. He was like, look man, tell your manager I smoked you, man. Whatever. I was like, that's what I wanted to see. Yes. Now if only you would sign the contract, this would be great. My coach was like, yo, can you stop messaging guys before the fight? Because I think that's messing up our ability to bring them in, because no one does that.
Guys were getting spooked.
Yeah, because I'm calm and just messing. Like I'm trying to take on the role of a negotiator as well, and that's not my job. That's the manager's job, the promoter's job. But I'm like, dude, come on, can you just make the fight happen? And now that I think about it, that would bug me if a guy who has a perfect record is messaging me like, come on, man, can you come on and fight me, like, please, like that would bug me.
Yeah, that sounds like a little bit of a mind fuck. For somebody on the other end.
That's probably the craziest thing I did. I've driven crazy distances to sell tickets, but that's about it. But I never pushed super crazy or super nuts on the promo side. They put my face on a billboard one time. I had no control over that.
Where was the billboard?
I still have a picture. The billboard was in West Virginia.
Okay.
Because there's a thing more things you learn about boxing, right? So West Virginia is an easier state to fight in, meaning the commission requires less of the opponent. Because a lot of people don't know this. You can't just bring anybody out the street. The athletic commission has to go, okay, this fight is okay. Which is why, like, sometimes the fights will be like mismatched, but very often at the club level, in a decent state, the fight is a mismatch. In West Virginia, though, it's like the Wild Wild West. It's like one of those states is like that. Like, not Indiana. Yeah, Indiana, because Chicago's in Illinois. Indiana. Okay. Pretty much like where you can just jump over the border and there's nothing else there. Yeah, so we'll do that. And they put me on the billboard down there, and that was cool.
Hey, man, you're cool, dude. EdLattimore.com, Ed Lattimore, everything. 1T, by the way, in Lattimore.
Hey, man, thank you for... A lot of people put 2 T's, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" But I guess like if I hear it, that's what you would hear based on what they teach us in school. But
1T, and Ed, man, I can't thank you enough. I appreciate all you're doing. Just like you're putting good stuff out there. You're helping people, and
I'm certainly trying, man. I realize that I'm fortunate, and this is just my personal belief. I don't think anyone has to follow it if they don't want to, but I think the greatest thing you can do with your life is to help another life, and I'm in a position to be able to do that, and I feel like it's almost a responsibility. Like I survived all the dumb stuff I did under the influence without jail time or hurting anybody, and I have to believe that a higher power spared me, and I don't ever want to mess that up. So I'm trying to like repay the debt that I have in this short time I have left on this planet.
Yeah, well, thanks for doing it, man. I appreciate it, Ed.
Hey, much appreciated, man. You have a good one.
You got it, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.